r/AskReddit. Ladies of Reddit, what is the creepiest thing your boyfriend past or present has ever done? I'm late to the party, but I have a great one. Started dating a guy the summer before 9th grade. It was my first boyfriend, and I was obviously excited. So we hung out a bunch all summer and everything was normal. He brought me to a second-hand serenade concert because I was an emo shit and I loved them at the time. But then school started and he started acting really weird, but I was like whatever, high school is weird. Then slowly I start noticing he's like weird. But I didn't break up with him mostly because we didn't see each other much and my friends and I were so invested in how weird he was that we wanted to see where it went. Couple months into the school year and dude Debro tries to convince me he's a fucking angel. Not just any angel though, oh no. That would be too simple. No, he was Archangel Michael. And he was fighting a war against Lucifer. This guy was actually trying to convince me he was an angel. I'm not even Christian, and he knew that, but still tried. So I played along for a little bit because laughs. It got creepy when he told me he used to fly to my apartment and sit on my roof, or come into my room, if my parents left the patio unlocked. Obviously I knew he was bullshitting BC, not an angel, but also because I was an insomniac and would usually be up working on homework or drawing when he's blowing up my phone with "oh you look so beautiful when you sleep" texts. Important side note, I lived on the 3rd floor, but my parents would still lock the patio door every night because we are a family of paranoid little shits. Another side note, between the first and only time he had been to my apartment and the time that this is all taking place, my older brother and I had switched rooms because we thought it would be a funny prank on my parents and just never switched back. So all that's happening, my friends and I make jokes and have laughs. One weekend we have a sleepover at my place because parents are out of town and my brother was cool. He had a general idea that I was totally uninterested in this guy at this point because, well, he was weird. So it's like 1 AM, my brother and his girlfriend are in his room watching a movie and my friends and I are in my room listening to music and just hanging out, kinda half doing homework, when I get a text from CREEPIEST asking if I'm still up. I ignore it. We make jokes about "oh no he's gonna fly into the apartment and find us all awake," and ignoring his messages. I get another message saying it's bad to sleep with the TV on because it'll give you demonic dreams. I don't even have a TV in my room anymore. I got it taken away for sleeping in and missing my bus too often. But whatever. Probably 15 minutes go by and I hear my brother yelling from the patio and we're all like what the hell, do we go check it out? And his girlfriend is in the living room and she just kind of gives me this look like what the fuck. So I go out to the patio and lo and behold, Michael the Archangel is standing in the grass in front of our building. Not literally, but you know. Apparently he had been throwing rocks towards my brother's window, thinking it was mine, and he was being romantic. The gist of what my brother yelled at him was "stay the fuck away from my sister you weird ass dickhead, or I swear to the actual god that I will throw my cat at your shitty human face." Never talked to him again after that. The messages stopped. He must have altered his hallway paths because I never saw him at school anymore, although it was a big school and if you weren't looking for somebody you probably wouldn't find them. It is still my favorite story to tell about any of my exes, though. Also, if anybody cares, my brother married that exact girlfriend like 6 years later. I dated my second boyfriend for nearly 2 years. The first year was pretty good. It was a mostly normal relationship. Once the 1-year mark hit, it all started going downhill. He was sexually abused as a child and had PTSD as a result. I went with him to his psychiatrist appointment once, and they let me in the room with him during his appointment. Well, I was underage at the time. He is about 1.5 years older than me, and let the event slip to my parents, who wanted to sue the psychiatrist for not even asking if I was 18. This didn't help our deteriorating relationship. I went on a mission trip to Guatemala for a week not too long after, and he got angry at me for going, and cried because he was convinced I would cheat on him with a Guatemalan man. He would cry if I went away for a few days, despite the fact I could only see him on weekends. He would pressure me into sexual activities and would get furious and occasionally cry when I declined, which is why I eventually gave in. He wouldn't let me hang out with my friends, even if they were girls, because they weren't him. I felt embarrassed having him around my friends anyway, because I was one of those smart students, while he barely graduated from high school. I guess he thought he didn't have control in the relationship. He absolutely had control over me, so he would try to keep me in the relationship by threatening to kill himself. I would tell his parents this, and they didn't seem to care. Towards the end of the relationship, I was accepted to college and began talking to another guy who would be in my class there. The relationship was purely platonic because we were both medical geeks and didn't have anyone else to gush over medical topics with. A few months later, my ex got dangerously furious at me and accused me of cheating. Because remember, you can't have a non-romantic/sexual relationship with another guy, according to him. He forced me to block the guy on Facebook. About a month later, I was at a church camp for a few days, and I sent him a Snapchat picture of me with another girl in the youth group who is a couple years younger than me. He was outraged that I would even associate with her and ordered me to not talk to her because she was younger than I was. That was the last straw. I almost broke up with him over text, but waited until I saw him again 2 days later. He threw a major fit and tried hurting himself, all in front of his family. He said he would never love anyone else and begged me to stay. Obviously I did not. The following day, I received a call from a local florist confirming my address. My mom told her to cancel the order because I would not accept the flowers if they were from him. It's been nearly 1 year since, and I have not heard much from him because he and his family are blocked on all social media and cannot call/text me. Interestingly, I saw Mr. Can't Live Without You at the beach a few weeks later holding another poor girl's hands. He tried convincing my beach companions that they were just friends. I eventually began reconnecting with the guy from my college on Facebook, and without the presence of my boyfriend breathing down my neck, we found that we were compatible as a couple in nearly every aspect. We have had a healthy relationship ever since. I saw my ex the night before I moved into college, and he got pissed at me when I hinted that I was in a relationship with that guy. Last I heard of my ex, he was fired from his job at NASA. He wasn't something like an engineer, but a custodian I believe, for yelling at a supervisor who confronted him about his poor work ethic. So much for fulfilling his dream of being a firefighter for NASA, I suppose. Sorry for a long post. This is the closest to creepy I have ever experienced. He was pretty emotionally and physically abusive for almost the entire 2 years we were together. He basically broke up with me in October telling me that I wasn't good enough for him and was dragging him down and hindering him from exploring other options. From October to December he strung me along and told me he wanted to work things out between us and he just needed some space for a while. Even asked me to come spend Christmas with him and his family in another state. When I was getting ready to leave, we arrived separately. He said goodbye, walked away and didn't so much as look back. Spent the next couple of weeks texting me about all of the other girls he was talking to. I decided to move on. February rolls around, and he finds out that I was seeing someone. It wasn't serious at that point, just out on a few dates as I didn't know if I was ready to pursue anything. He calls me screaming at me, asking me how I could have betrayed him like that, calling me a slut, and every other word imaginable. I tell him I moved on with my life like he obviously had, and that he broke up with me, so he had no right to get upset when I dated other people. I'm used to his emotional abuse and manipulation, so I hang up the phone and go back into the library to keep studying with my roommates. My phone starts going off, and I get a long string of text messages about how he wanted to kill me, and then proceeded to explain how he would do it in extremely graphic detail. He's talking about how he wants to grab my throat and squeeze until he sees the eyes roll into the back of my head, how he wants to hear the crunch of my ribs as he kicks them in, how he wants to put a foot on my back and pull my arms back until I go limp, how much pleasure he would get from the sounds of my screams. I freak out, call my parents, and tell them what's happening. My father is furious and threatens to call the police. I begged him not to and asked him to please let him handle it myself because I didn't want to ruin his life. I had just been in an abusive relationship for 2 years, so my emotions when it comes to him aren't sound or logical. I could recognize that it was probably a mental health issue and figured he needed professional help. My dad said he would only refrain from calling the cops if I called my ex's mother and told her what he was doing so she could keep an eye on him and let me know if he was planning any trips down to where I was. He was going to school in another state. He also asked me to let the guy I was seeing know what was happening so that he wouldn't get pulled into crazy without agreeing to it. She told me he had always been an angry child, but when we started dating he seemed happier and less angry, so she just figured that I was really good for him and was happy. She said she felt guilty about never even thinking about the fact that the anger was being taken out on me instead. I kept screenshots of the text messages in case he ever did anything to me or to anyone else. I reached out to the girls that he was seeing and explained to them what kind of person he was and that they needed to be careful. It's been years. The person I was seeing that he freaked out over has now been my boyfriend for going on 3 years now. He's never laid a hand on me. Anytime he raises his voice I immediately shut down or start having a full-blown panic attack. Anytime he makes a sudden movement towards me, I flinch. That relationship and how it ended has messed up my psyche in ways I don't really know if I'll ever recover from. I met a guy freshman year of HS. Was friends with him all throughout HS. And he was a really sweet guy. He has a dream to be a rapper, so he would send me a like 5 every week. For a while I read them, but they started happening so often, and they were so long, that I would forget sometimes. He would even continuously send them, even if I didn't answer. So one day I was skimming through one, and I saw my name. And in the rap he mentioned how he loved me for 4 years, but I don't give him the time of day. So I started really talking to him, and decided to give him a chance. Horrible mistake. This guy has the worst self-esteem issues I have ever seen. He wouldn't hang out with me alone. He wouldn't touch me unless I touched him and would always cancel plans because he was scared. He started saying I love you the first week and would get mad at me every time I didn't say it back. He kept telling me how I'm the reason why he's depressed. I'm the reason why he won't get anywhere in life. He would call me at night crying because I ruined his life all because I waited too long to date him and didn't love him. I also have major depression, so during all of that, I really felt like it was my fault. So after a few weeks of him dragging me lower than what I already was, I broke up with him. After that, he dropped out of high school because he couldn't even look at me. He would still text me and beg me to take him back, but then text me after telling me I ruined his life and I'm reason for all his problems. 3 months later, we were both dating someone new. I knew about his relationship, but he didn't know about mine. He ended up moving out of state, and a few hours after he left, he texted me telling me that he was sorry and that he already misses me. I told him that I can be friends but nothing more because I'm in a relationship. He then harassed me, calling me a slut and bitch for moving on so fast and breaking his heart again, even though he had a new girlfriend. I know it probably doesn't sound bad, but him telling me that I ruined his life continuously while I was also depressed really fucked me up. Honestly, worst decision I've made relationship wise. I'm a lady, and so was the person who did this, but oh boy do we have a fun story. I made friends with this girl online, we hit it off, played on all the same sites, CCT, all this jazz. We did roleplay stories, like where we wrote characters opposite to each other and played out scenes and stuff. She was really good, but after a while of being friends she started to hint she was interested in me. I was like 18 and she was 16 and wouldn't take no for an answer, so I told her when she was legal I could date her, thinking she'd forget about it. and after a couple months she seemed to. We were still friends. We talked on the phone sometimes. She sent me a birthday gift, all innocuous sort of stuff that I'm a lot more careful about now. And then she turned 17 and asked about us dating again. Well, she was across the country and I felt kind of bad, and I didn't really take the idea of dating seriously. So she was my girlfriend for a couple months. She started to treat a friend like absolute shit for no reason and was being a little creepy, and I broke stuff off with her after a few months and stopped talking to her. Not long after that I gave away a virtual pet she gave me and she flipped out on me. Then I happened to get into an argument with someone who's a friend of hers and she accused me of harassing her friends to get to her. Then she proceeded to dox me for 3 days straight. She took photos from my MySpace, my phone number, every scrap of information she had including my full name and address, and circulated it on 4chan, chat rooms, etc. I had to call the police. I was scared someone would show up at my house. On their advice I emailed her a statement saying not to contact me or spread my info around. She sent back a huge grant on how, if I was going to ruin her online life she would ruin my real life etc. She thought I was stalking her on all these websites and bribing mods or something to get her banned. I totally wasn't. I reported her on one site when she was harassing me and she just thought it was me everywhere. Last I saw of her was a Tumblr video by an ex-roommate. She lives in filth and keeps dead puppies in a freezer with food. She made the news for having her wolf hybrid dogs seized after she was selling hybrid puppies. I don't really talk about it in this much detail. Apparently she's bragged about what she did to me to others. I'm generally a lot more careful with putting my name out there, not being the same person across platforms now etc. It was a really bad experience and I think it's honestly kept me from connecting closely with a lot of potential people, close to 6 years in now. Someone who seems perfectly nice and normal and sweet can snap and make your life a living hell quite easily. My first serious boyfriend lasted almost 2 years or something close, was a nutcase. Okay, for starters, when I first met him, I was a freshman in high school. I didn't think anything of our encounter. Then I got a Facebook request from him. I thought he was okay looking, and we had some mutual friends, so I thought why not, and added him. It's almost like he was waiting for me to add him, and almost instantly I got a message from him, which was fine. But then it got weird. He decided to try and joke about how he was just about to kill himself if I didn't add him or answer his message. I was weirded out, but I just shrugged it off and thought maybe he was just nervous and babbling or something. Fast forward to 2 weeks after we met each other. He drops that he loves me and that he'll treat me great and everything a 15-year-old girl wants to hear. I told him I don't love him, but maybe it'll happen someday. He apparently cried himself to sleep, but I still ended up dating him for some unknown reason. Maybe because I felt sorry for him? He'd get mad if I talked to his younger brother or any of his guy friends that would be at his dad's house. Made me stop talking to all of my guy friends after one of them picked me up while hugging me, then my friends altogether, because he thought that I didn't give enough attention to him. Mind you, I saw him every single day, even if that meant he showed up at my house and wait until I came out so he could pick me up and throw me in his car. I was barely 5 feet at the time, and he was about 6 foot. If I didn't want to see him, he'd threaten to kill himself. I didn't want to have sex with him until I was comfortable around him, and because he said he was a virgin and wanted me to take his virginity. I later found out he told all of his girlfriends that, so they'd feel sorry for him and have sex with him. He also got mad that he wouldn't be the first person I had sex with, he was the third, and was mad that I'm bisexual, so he was mad that I was passed around to everyone. That pissed me off, and we got in a fight about it, and he told me he'd kill himself if I didn't stop being bisexual. Come on, man. I was just fed up with him, but stayed for him for another year or so after. Literally, a month or 2 in, he wanted me email and password to every social media I had, Facebook, Twitter, Skype, even my school stuff. so he could link everything together. I fought it as hard as I could, but surprise. He said if I didn't he'd kill himself, so I just said fuck it. So he'd go through my Facebook, making sure he liked the person before I added them or even talked to them. He was thoroughly convinced I was cheating on him, so he'd constantly check my phone, my pictures, messages, contacts, everything. When I was with him, he'd take my phone, turn it off, and put it somewhere high up that I couldn't reach until he had to take me home. Near the end of our relationship, I literally ran away from him, hid in some Burger King bathroom, and called one of my close guy friends to take me home. When he told me he was in the parking lot, Psycho X was in the parking lot and almost hit my friend's car and told me to get into his, and he sped off back towards his house. I jumped out of his car and walked back to my friend's car and told him to just fucking go. After the breakup completely happened, he'd park in my driveway late at night and shine his lights in my room. It got so bad my father told him he'd go to jail just to make sure he leaves me alone. He left me a 5-page note, front and back, saying in detail how he thinks we should still be together, how he wants to get married, he has a ring for me, he understands I'm just on my period and need some alone time and he'll be waiting. So I had my guy friend who drove me home the crazy night, who my ex absolutely hated by the way, come to my house and be shirtless when my ex brought me all of my stuff back. Oh man. I dated a huge sack of crazy for 2 years in high school. Let's see what I can recall, as chronologically as I can. Told me that he had all kinds of crazy stuff in his history. Drugs, abuse, loss, just all the worst things. And being 15 and stupid I believed all of it, and decided it was my job to comfort and fix him. This was probably his goal from the start. He asked me to help him bleach his hair, because I'd just done mine, and he liked the color. I helped him with his, but his hair didn't take to it like mine did, and stayed a very yellow blonde instead of my white blonde. The next day he walked up behind me while I was making him some food, and cut a huge chunk out of my hair. He said he wanted to remember it as this color forever. Frequently masturbated with the previously mentioned lock of hair. It got disgusting pretty quick. A few months in, he started poking holes in the condoms, which I only found out later. Started having me paint his nails black, and then would chip it off and put it in the top drawer of his dresser. No explanation for this one. We fought viciously, savagely viscous, like, drag me down the hall by my hair vicious. After one such incident, with the actual hair dragging, one of 3 times ever, he came to apologize to me. After I'd locked myself in his bathroom, I refused him entry. He walked away and was quiet for like 15 minutes. So I came out, and he'd carved both of our initials into his chest with a serrated knife as an apology. It scarred. One time, his parents were actually around for this one. I was making burgers for a cookout and jokingly said if he didn't stop hovering, his touch him work my meaty hands, and he flipped out and threw a couch cushion at the TV. He was terrified of raw meat. I found all kinds of pictures on his phone of me and other random girls sleeping, sometimes with his dick on my / their face. Very disturbing. He would do all kinds of weird stuff during sex. One time he just fucking materialized a banana. No idea where this banana came from, but he was still thrusting and just suddenly had it in his hand and shoved it in my mouth. Hard knobbly bit first, and tore the skin that connected my upper lip to my gums. When I complained, he told me that I should have been a better monkey. Not even sure what that means. Pushed me down his front stairs once, just to see how I'd react. Loved to talk about all the ways he could hypothetically mutilate my cats. This was always very upsetting to me. When we finally broke up, maybe a week later, the cops came to my house at like 3 AM or some crazy time and told my mom there was reports of someone attempting to enter our 2nd floor window, which was my bedroom. Few days after that, I found what I assume were blood spots on my pillow and parts of a dead mouse oval on my bed, arranged in a heart. We changed the locks. My ex, if you can call him that, only got really bad after we parted ways, but before that, about 2 months in, decided I was cheating on him. Now we work together and were great friends at first, but when he wasn't around me would demand I FaceTime him, show him my surroundings, and send him screenshots of my GPS location. Found out later he had gotten back together with his ex a few weeks in and was living with her all throughout the time we were doing our thing. He would also insist that we weren't together and no labels, just vibes, but demanded that I act like we were engaged and would become super aggressive if he heard a name that sounded like a guy's in relation to me. He would openly grab my phone and dig like there's no tomorrow, even insisting that I change the names of all the guys I was fucking to girls' names. After getting a call from his girlfriend that he had a kid with and had insisted that they had been broken up with for a while, lies, I cut him off cold turkey. He went crazy, texting non-stop at all hours, staring me down at work, and calling names under his breath, and stalked me on social media. I blocked him on all of it. Then he *67 called my number and got around my block and proceeded to call non-stop for hours around 4 in the morning. He even left me multiple voicemails calling me a hoe slut psycho bitch and a few others. I stupidly picked up the phone when it said no caller ID. He created fake profiles and tried to use those to contact me. Tried to follow me out to my car after work. Tried to hide between cars, but he's not that clever, and I started parking where there's cameras. Attempted to put his hands on me in a friendly way. He even tried to pin me in the back of our workplace to get me to talk to him on multiple occasions. Police became involved, and a protective order is in the works. I found out through a mutual friend that according to him it'll all get better when he gets back with me. What the hell, dude? I left that job and will be moving out of state, but he's psycho and still insists that I still need him and that I was the one chasing him and I couldn't take being away from him. Thankfully I started taking screenshots and recording everything after he got around my block the first time. Forever blocklisted, and I still have panic attacks when I see certain blacked out cars of a certain make and model. Some people are crazy pants. First story is short, happened to Aish years ago. Broke up with, incredibly normal, like normal to the point of boring, boyfriend and moved back home. I spent the night at my best friend's house and got a text from him at 4 AM asking me where my car was because it wasn't parked in front of my house. Didn't text back until later when he directly asked me where I was and who I was with. Told him to fuck off. This is definitely more crazy than creepy, but I was certainly creeped the fuck out. I had gone on a date with a guy, Andrew, 2 years older than me in high school. He had graduated. He was rich and liked to flaunt his money and would throw parties for high schoolers a lot, but people thought he was kind of weird, so there would only be like 10 people there. He invited me to one of these parties, and I went, not really knowing what he was actually like at that point. I was having a great time actually, because who doesn't feel cool drinking underage, although I only had 2 beers that night, since I had to drive home after. I recognized someone as my friend's ex-boyfriend. Their breakup was fairly amicable, and said hi, and caught up with them for a minute, then walked back to my seat. I noticed Andrew had gotten very cold and ignored me for a bit. I didn't really care very much and decided I just wanted to go home. Suddenly I heard people in the kitchen go quiet and Andrew went into the backyard and hit his punching bag over and over. The entire party was quiet then, curious about his obvious seething anger. I immediately went up to him and told him I was going home, and although I told him not to, he insisted on walking me to my car and was very sweet about it. I asked him what had happened and he said nothing, and I just assumed it was something that didn't involve me at all, so I didn't think about it after that. Until the next afternoon I got a message on FB from the friend's ex-boyfriend I had momentarily caught up with, who was extremely rude and told me to keep my drama to myself, etc. In genuine confusion I asked him to elaborate. Apparently, Andrew had seen us talking and assumed we were going to hook up. Confronted the guy punched his marble countertop, then went outside to punch the bag. I immediately called Andrew and absolutely berated him, and he begged me not to break it off, saying he was defending me and he had broken his hand for me. As all 17-year-old girls can be, I was unnecessarily cruel to him and laughed at him and called him pathetic and mocked him until I hung up on him, telling him to never speak to me again. He proceeded to call, text, FB message, and email me non-stop for a few weeks, alternating between begging for my forgiveness and ridiculous machismo. It stopped, thank goodness, although it was more annoying than creepy. I ran into him a few years ago while he was taking his clients out to lunch. He attempted to talk to me, but I turned my back and walked away. A year or so after that, he messaged me on FB saying he had found God and was giving it all up to become a missionary in Africa. Edit. Sorry about the block text. No idea how to format. Trying to fix it. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.